the current legislation on registration of trust does not specifically specify the types of trust that one is supposed to register. And that's the reason why we have had many people using trust as vehicles to hide ill-gotten properties, so that they can run away from government. And you look at clause 22, it gives a proper roadmap on how one can proceed and register trust. This has never been there before, because it gives even a requirement what's supposed to contain in on the trust deed, so that you disclose the purpose of the trust, the property to be put under trust, and even the purpose, and even the beneficial owner, as it is in registration of companies, so that we know that this trust was registered by so and so for this particular purpose, and these are the beneficial owners, or these are the people, the trustees, who are responsible for, if there's any question to be raised, there are people to be followed legally. I therefore, having perused the act, I support that it's a very important bill that is going to provide a clear roadmap to Kenyans, so that it even makes it easier for any person wishing to register trust to move and register without any other hindrances. And also, you will note, Honorable Speaker, that in this particular bill, by differentiating a family trust and non-charitable trust and charitable trust, you will note that even the churches we have are registered, some are registered as trusts. And you find that when a church is registered in Nairobi here, they have branches in Busia or Kilifi. Those subsidiary churches, they want to own property. It becomes a problem for them, because they must go to the mother church to provide them with the certificate, so that they can also own a piece of land, which has been very difficult. That's why we have had many people in church fighting over properties. But when you have a clear legal framework where trust can operate, it will benefit our citizens. I therefore support this particular bill.
Honorable Speaker, I stand on standing order number 96 and move that the debate be now adjourned in view of the seriousness of the matter. The need to fast.
The member Funyula has stood on his sheet, starting order number 96, that because of the importance of this matter, that instead of asking the member to reply now, we adjourn debate. Is that the mood of the House? Yes. I therefore put the question that the debate on the Trust Administration Bill, National Assembly Bill number 29 of 2026, be now adjourned. As many of that opinion say aye. As many of that opinion say nay. Ayes have it. The debate on the bill is therefore accordingly adjourned to the next time it's laid in the other paper.
Order number 11, the Power of Mercy Bill, National Assembly Bill number 56 of 2025, second reading, resumption of debate, adjourned.
Funyula, were you on this also? Was there someone with the floor, so the first bite, then this afternoon goes to... There was no one on the floor, and therefore this chance goes to the member for Funyula to proceed with the debate.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Let me at this onset stand to support the bill, the Power of Mercy Bill 2025, National Assembly, Bill number 56. Honorable Speaker, the bill is before us in pursuant to Article 133 of the Constitution of Kenya that grants the President of the Republic of Kenya the power of mercy for those convicted, jailed, or found the wrong side of the law. Honorable Speaker, I just want to start by reading the definition of the word mercy as presented in clause 2 of the respective bill. Means compassion or forgiveness shown towards an offender by the President. Forgiveness, compassion or forgiveness shown to an offender by the President. The Constitution of Kenya contemplates, and this has been even since independence, that there could be a conviction that requires some form of mercy, excess of the power of mercy by the President of the Republic of Kenya. In the Constitution that we promulgated in 2010, it provides very elaborate procedures to ensure that this power of mercy is not abused by the person who is entitled to make those, to exercise that power. Honorable Speaker, it also provides for pardon, means grant of mercy that permits an offender who has completed their sentence and demonstrated that a law-abiding citizen for a prescribed number of years to have all records pertaining to the criminal conviction be kept separate and apart from other records. Honorable Speaker, in this country, and probably elsewhere in the world, there are very many people serving in our correction facilities, serving in our prisons, who on the balance of evidence available could have been wrongly convicted, who by any chance could have been convicted because of false testimony. There has been very many cases where witnesses have come much, much later to recount their evidence that was wrongly used to convict people for no apparent reason. Honorable Speaker, as I stand here today, there was a case of mob arson sometimes in 2024 in my constituency. One of a boy who was just watching out of curiosity was found within the scene and is now serving 10 years in prison for an offense he was not party to. He was only a curious witness, a curious onlooker. And that's why in the wisdom that all constitutions in the world gives the president the power to pardon people who have been convicted after following the due process. Honorable Speaker, it also provides for remission, which means a grant of mercy that allows an offender to be released from imprisonment on the basis of good conduct, with the effect that all or part of the punishment is cancelled. Honorable Speaker, when you commit an offense, you are just it's not necessarily a bad person. You have been forced to make that commit an offense for various reasons. A mistake should not be a lifelong punishment, and that's why for me where I stand and sit, I don't support death penalty. Because death penalty is a finality. You have no reason for you to correct your mistakes and get rehabilitated in the society. It's not even a punishment, so to speak. It's an end to your matter. So that even later in life, if it was found that you are convicted wrongly, we cannot restitute life that has already been taken out. Honorable Speaker, the bill has got very, very good provisions. It says that a vulnerable offender is one of the conditions can be considered. And a vulnerable offender means a female with a child under the age of 2 years or who is pregnant, or over the age of 60 years, like quite a number of us members who are here. If you are convicted and you are over 60 years, that's a fertile ground for you to seek the power of mercy from the president. You are terminally ill, or you are permanently disabled. Honorable Speaker, on the issue of female with a child under the age of 2 years, or who is pregnant, that's a point of debate that we need to debate very carefully, because they can collude between a female prisoner and a male prisoner warder to do what they can do to make sure the prisoner gets benefits from the same. Honorable Speaker, clause 5.4 provides that the member of the advisory committee appointed under this section shall serve as part-time basis for a single term of 5 years. Honorable Speaker, now what is out of order?
The Majority Leader,
Open of information.
Do you want to be informed
yeah, the
by the
majority
Honorable?
can inform me.
Honorable Speaker, you know, I didn't want to interrupt my good friend Oundo, but just to inform him that I heard him say that 2 prisoners can collude to do the necessary to be able to benefit from this if you are pregnant. And of course, he's a doctor. He knows pregnancy comes from conjugal rights that prisoners in Kenya do not enjoy. Therefore, just to inform the member for Funyula that prisoners in Kenya do not enjoy the rights to their conjugal rights while serving their sentences in prison. So they may not collude as the, just to allay his fears that there may be collusion between, maybe unless there is collusion between a prisoner and a sentry, the wardens at the prisons.
But where would they do that?
But they, again, is also illegal. There are no conjugal rights. And sexual intercourse in prisons is not allowed.
Where would they do that?
What do you mean?
This sentry and prisoner, where would they be doing this?
Honorable Speaker, you know, I have seen instances where in Kakamega Forest, the park in Kakamega Forest, they used benches. So don't asking where they would do it, Honorable Speaker. I'm just stretching my imagination. But the point is, I wanted to inform Oundo that it is illegal. Prisoners in Kenya do not have conjugal rights, unlike in some countries in the West where people enjoy conjugal rights while in prison. Here you do not enjoy, and therefore you must avoid going to prison.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Sir George, you also want to inform the Honorable Oundo, or?
Finally, I'll get.
Just to inform the House faster than Honorable Oundo, that in the famous Murua Tetu case, remember the sentence was death for the 3 of them, and they were all from custody. But there was a lady in between them who actually raised her hand and said, sorry, I'm expectant, so I cannot be sentenced to death. And everybody in the country was asking, how did she become expectant? So it is not a conjunction on the part of the leader majority. These things happen. They are not very common, but we are human beings. Honorable Oundo, be happy that we are not abolishing the death sentence in the NCAJ bills that I tabled reports this later, I think early this afternoon, on amendments to the Penal Code and the Criminal Procedure Code. What we are doing is to remove the mandatory death sentence, such that the judge has a discretion to sentence you to death or give you life imprisonment, depending on the circumstances under which you committed the offense. Because judges have been complaining, mandatory death sentence is not judicial. They do not have a discretion. They must thus have that discretion. Thank you.
You are informed.
Informed, but if you went to school, there was osmosis. And Sir George knows it can also happen through osmosis, Honorable Speaker. In any case, I'm very well guided and informed. Honorable Speaker, Article Clause 12 of the bill has a very curious provision that we might have to read the report of JLAC to understand how to treat it. It provides that despite Section 1, Subsection 1, in the performance of its duty functions, the advisory committee shall not be bound by the strict rules of evidence. We will need to be very clear, because this evidence-based, the person who was convicted based on the presented evidence. If we do not follow the strict provisions of evidence, the rules of evidence, it means then we'll continue with the same systematic mistake and we might end up in the same problem. Honorable Speaker, probably might have to question the wisdom of a full-fledged secretariat, considering that this advisory committee will be domiciled in the office of the president. We might have to ask the necessity of a full-fledged secretariat, yet there's some work that can be done. And in addition, Honorable Speaker, we have the Power of Mercy Case Management Committee in each correctional facility. We might just have duplication of roles that are basically not necessary, Honorable Speaker. Of course, Honorable Speaker, I want to be very clear, and I'll need this further, because when you go to clause 28, the bill makes reference to positions in the public service that are not provided for in the Constitution. For example, they say, Honorable Speaker, in clause 28, that one of the bodies to be consulted is the Directorate of Criminal Investigation. Honorable Speaker, when you go to Article 239 of the Constitution of Kenya, the security organs is Kenya Defense Forces, National Intelligence Services, and National Police Services. Of course, everybody will ask, where does the Criminal Investigation Agency come in a matter that surely looks more like a constitutional provision, not a matter of legislation? Honorable Speaker, in the same clause 28(5), it provides, among the people who are eligible for the exercise of the President of the Power of Mercy are sexual offenders. Honorable Speaker, I just hope in the committee of the whole House, one of the amendments that must have provided by JLAC is to remove any chance as a sexual offender and a serial sexual offender can be given, can benefit from the prerogative of the President on the mercy, on that. Also, again, Honorable Speaker, violent offenders who cause serious bodily harm to the victim where the offense was found to be motivated by discrimination, including gender-based discrimination, gender-based violence, female genital mutilation, domestic violence, ethnic-based violence, or violence against persons with disability. Honorable Speaker, on that I will have to move an amendment because that's abuse of the prerogative of power of mercy by the President. Honorable Speaker, as I conclude, Honorable Speaker, we need as a country to look at our judicial system, our prosecution system. Honorable Speaker, I can guess, Honorable Speaker, even if you go to the
Honorable, 1 or 2 minutes.
Honorable Speaker, if you walk to many of these prisons, and I'll start with the prison in Busia, Kurinda, I can bet there are people who are wasting space in prisons for very petty offenses. If you are arrested in taking Samia gin or Nguri, that cannot be an offense warranting you to go and rot in prison. That's an offense they can just make you stand, you sober up, and continue the activities, Honorable Speaker. There are some things that don't, then there is also, you would find the policeman, will find you walking in the evening late at night, they arrest you for loitering with the intent to commit an offense. Because they cannot prove that offense, they can plant on you some basic things like bang and the kind of thing. We seriously as a country, and Sir George, I want to challenge you, before you go to become the governor of Tharaka Nithi County. You know Tharaka, the votes from Tharaka always used to unsettle the election results. Please sit down with your committee, plus the judiciary, plus the office of the prosecutor or the DPP. Let's look at the offenses that can take somebody to prison. There's a provision in the law for community work. It will be much, much, much easier and more effective and beneficial to the community if those arrested for pet offenses can be called upon to do community work, like assisting the county governments that cannot even collect garbage, yet they receive billions and billions of money every day. Those arrested loitering around Funyula town, the mountain garbage in Funyula town, they can be told to pick the same. Instead of taking them to Korinda, wasting people's time, going to go there, get them out, it does not make economic sense. Let's have effective use of our resources. When Uncle Moody was the Minister for Interior, Uncle Moody, he's the one who brought beds in prisons. So majority leader, the beds there can be used to do so many things. It is not confined alone for sleeping. We can as well continue. Because not all prisoners are bad. They are just there. By unfortunate incidents, they can still have children who are very good citizens of this country. With those few remarks, Honorable Speaker, I support the bill.
The Honorable Murugara. Murugara. The Honorable Murugara, it turns out that you already contributed on this bill. No, you did already, so. He's not on the floor anymore, and you know that you can only inform him if he's on his feet. I gave you already. The Honorable order. Murugara, after the Honorable informing the Honorable Undo, I gave a chance to inform him, didn't I? And said, yes, so let's leave it at that. The Honorable Mutunga, do you want to contribute to this? You did. So, the Honorable Bayer, go ahead.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I support this bill. I think this is a very progressive piece of legislation, Honorable Speaker, that tries to amend the Power of Mercy Bill 2025. Honorable Speaker, I think it is very important that we give effect to articles of our Constitution. And this is one such bill, that Article 133 of the Constitution provides for the appointment, tenure of office of the members of the Advisory Committee on Power of Mercy and the powers and functions of the Advisory Committee on the Power of Mercy for connected purposes. I think this is a very progressive piece of legislation. The Power of Mercy office, there is a department called the Power of Mercy. If you go to the building, the National Library, I think it's at the National Library, you go there, you will actually find the offices of the Power of Mercy, which is an extension of the office of the President. But now we are giving legislation to give effect to that constitutional provision. I think that's an important thing. So that the Power of Mercy Secretariat that you see at that building now has a legal framework within which to operate. And I think this is a good beginning. And I think it is important, like my friend Dr. Oundo has said, it is very important that sometimes offenders get into, or prisoners are imprisoned sometimes not because of offenses that they committed, but just because by law or by operation of law or by some misjudgment somewhere, they end up in prison. And sometimes these prisoners actually they're actually not criminals, but they are there, and they should get a leeway in which they can get out. Sometimes prison sentences are imposed that as long-term prison sentences. But as a person stays in prison, he becomes a reformed person. Continuing to keep that prisoner in that prison, Honorable Speaker, then you are actually curtailing the rights of this person. And that's why the framers of our Constitution and the makers of our Constitution thought it wise that they bestow the power of mercy on the President. But this law does not just allow power of mercy to be exercised by the President alone, but this law provides a mechanism in which to arrive at the decision at the end where power of mercy is exercised. And I think that's an important thing, because the President cannot just come to a prison and say, you and you and you and you are pardoned, go out. He cannot do that. There has to be a mechanism, a foolproof mechanism to say, this one can be pardoned. This one can benefit from power of mercy. This one can benefit from power of mercy. And that's why this bill is important. Secondly, Honorable Speaker, it is also important to note which offenses cannot benefit from power of mercy. I've read Section 28, for which my brother, Dr. Oundo, talked about. But there is this Section 28. The President may, pursuant to Article 133(1), B of the Constitution, on the advice of the advisory committee, grant a conditional pardon. A conditional pardon. The president may give conditional pardon in case of a misdemeanor where the convicted offender has served at least 1/3 of the custodial sentence. In B, it says, in case of a felony where the convicted offender has served at least 15 years of the custodial sentence. In case of an offender serving an indeterminate sentence, or 1/3 in case of an offender serving determinate sentence. And then it comes to the areas where my brother Oundo was talking about in 5. In 5. And I think these are important things, Honorable Speaker. Despite Section 3, the following offenders who have served a determinate sentence, including habitual offenders who have committed 2 or more felonies, sexual offenders, violent offenders, all these, I want to agree with Honorable Oundo, should never be pardoned. A sexual offender is most likely to repeat that offense when he is released. And again, there are some offenses that when you release that person, he comes back because of power of mercy. That family that was subject of that offense, Honorable Speaker, seeing that person having been pardoned, you actually reduce the exercise of justice. You know, you enjoy justice when the offender has been offended. You say, finally I got justice. When somebody kills another person and that person is jailed, the family will say, finally we've got justice. Then 1 year, 3 years down the line, the person comes out to walk scot-free because he has been pardoned. How restitution, justice, you know, is also part of restitution, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, it is very important that these offenses be removed from the list of those who can benefit from the prerogative of substitute a less severe form of punishment on medical grounds. Honorable Speaker, there are people out there in our prisons who, even that imprisonment does not serve the purpose for it because they are terminally ill. You know, they are on medical grounds. They suffer from an incurable terminal illness or a highly contagious disease. The prerogative of power mercy can be exercised, Honorable Speaker. If a person is entirely incapacitated, requiring assistance with the activities of daily living, that person can enjoy the prerogative of power of mercy. If a person is of advanced age, that person should enjoy power. Is critically ill or is pregnant. The Honorable Leader said this is debatable. How does someone become pregnant in prison? How does someone become pregnant in prison? Yes. Osmosis. We only know one person in this world who got pregnant without having had the act that leads to pregnancy. Only one. The mother of Jesus. And I have not heard of any other osmosis pregnancy until the one that Honorable Mayaka is talking about. Honorable Speaker, these are enough grounds. A person is pregnant and is in prison, is a lactating mother or the sole caretaker of a dependent child. Honorable Speaker, I think power of mercy could be exercised in this. Honorable Speaker, it is very important to say, if you have read the book by Dr. Ksowski, the one called Crime and Punishment, crime must be punished. Crime must be punished. Crime against a citizen must be punished. Crime against the state must be punished. But even when we do that, we must do it in such a way that it is not a complete sentence out of life, out of society, and that is why the framers of our Constitution introduced Article 133, that we can actually exercise. And it is very important to note that this prerogative of power of mercy was given to the highest office. It was not given to any other person, the highest office. But that highest office was not just given blanket. There are structures that this power of mass must be exercised within. And within those structures, then we bequeath, as the 13th Parliament, this law that must guide those structures, those people who have been given the authority to help the head of state to exercise power of mass. And therefore, with all those things that I have said, Honorable Speaker, I am convinced that this is a good law. It is actually an expression of constitutional articles, and that we're giving effect to that constitutional. And I think this 13th Parliament should go into history as one that gave a lot of effect to many constitutional articles. Honorable Speaker, I support.
Okay. The Honorable Bishop Kosgei.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the onset, I want to support this bill on three outstanding explanations that is coming out. Number one, the interpretation of Article 133 in our Constitution is necessary to be given legislative attention in order to facilitate the constitutional right provided for through the hand of the president or the leader of the country. Mr. Speaker, it has been said there are people in jail today who are supposed to be outside, and there are those roaming around who are supposed to be in. And it is because of the facts provided at that time, and also over time, people reform, and it is found to be morally right to revisit the same. This particular article gave room for such an opportunity to give such people a second time. So, Mr. Speaker, this bill has come at an opportune time. The second reason that has come out is that, you know, our prisons are so congested and people are increasing with many petty crimes around. And I think this particular interpretation of the law and making it possible for some people to have them out to decongest the prison, of course without compromising those factors that put them there, that they will not repeat it once again. If a clear sign of reformation has been given or has been witnessed, then they deserve to have the mercy of the president. Finally, Mr. Speaker, it is observed that while exercising this, there are some new development of disabilities in people, that even when you exercise the usual way of restraining using law, they may require a deeper understanding on why some people do what they do. Some of them are an internal impairment that they will never learn a lesson anyway. So there could be some other alternative ways of helping the same. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I support the bill.
The Honorable Jalas, do you want to speak on this? The Honorable Jalas, do you want to speak on this? The Honorable Felix Odiwar, because I can see you're keen to speak. Not on this one, okay. Members, there being no further interest on this, I would request the majority leader to reply. The Honorable Murugara, you have the honor of being the majority leader today.
Thank you. Thank you very much,
Order.
Honorable Speaker.
Order. The member for Kabondo Kasipul, I don't see your card.
I don't have it with me, but I would like to speak on the bill.
On the Power of Mercy bill?
Yes.
Go ahead. Just indulge us for a few minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to also add my voice to this bill. Mr. Speaker, at onset, I support the bill. I note that the bill provides a clear legal framework governing the exercise of power of mercy in Kenya, focusing on pardons, commutations, remission of sentences, and related presidential prerogatives, while at the same time enhancing transparency, consistency, and accountability. Mr. Speaker, the key provisions I've noted to be merit and criteria for consideration. It establishes the principle guiding mercy decisions such as length of sentence, reserved behavior, humanitarian grounds, and impact of the victim. So through the other provision is on the Independent Advisory Committee, which is a good thing, which creates a Power of Mercy Committee, and it will receive and screen petitions. It will make recommendations to the President, ensure consistent application and mercy standards, and the committee members have noted is drawn from the government and so civil society and subject matter experts. Mr. Speaker, the pros of this bill, Mr. Speaker, one is it will promote transparency and fairness in the exercise of mercy powers. Two, it will also ensure consistent standards in the decision making and enhance accountability to the public and also to us, to Parliament. And it will give a victim a structured voice in mercy processes. Mr. Speaker, it also encourages rehabilitation and humane treatment of offenders. Mr. Speaker, however, I've noted that there could be, not necessarily that there are challenges, but there could be challenges, Mr. Speaker. One, that it requires adequate resourcing for the advisory committee and administrative functions. Mr. Speaker, another possible challenge is that victim participation could complicate or lengthen the process. The third one is striking or finding the right balance between mercy and public safety may be at times complex. And finally, implementation depends on political will and procedural discipline. And we've seen this in several other issues, similar issues. Mr. Speaker, with those, I know that you are concluding on this debate. I wish to state again that I support. Thank you.
Honourable Speaker.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, listening to the members and the debate on this particular bill, Honourable Speaker, we are not differing in anything. We are actually paraphrasing now. I would propose
Order.
that
Honourable order. Honourable Mutunga, take your seat. Just take your seat. Order. Take your seat. Honourable Murugara, could you proceed to reply?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I wish to thank each and every member who has made a contribution to this. This is a very important piece of legislation. And it has a long checkered history, right from the royalty in England all the way up to where we are today, exercising first and foremost, it was called the presidential prerogative. Now it is the power of mercy, defined in different ways. It's important to emphasize that our prisons really are not punitive anymore. In fact, we are calling them correctional facilities. You go in there not to be punished for the offense you've committed and convicted of, but to be corrected so that you come out a reformed person. So, when you exercise this power of mercy, it is going to extend to all offenses, but with certain conditions, including murderers now. And it may not be fair to call them murderers, though once they are convicted of murder, they become murderers. Once you are convicted of murder and you are sentenced to a prison term, say 10 years, for reasons we are setting out in the bill, you'll be actually eligible to apply for remission or for the power of mercy to be in your favor. We have also talked about sexual offenses. And here we have to make it very clear, not all sexual offenses are as callous as some of which we have in mind. I know the debaters are worried about rapists who may apply to be released on power of mercy, or those who've committed defilement. However, sexual offenses are quite extensive, especially to ladies, men and ladies, including what is called indecent assault. We have some other offenses which are not clear to all of us, like indecent exposure. All these are sexual offenses. Some of them are lesser, and therefore you'll be entitled to apply. Others are grave, and therefore we have put a 5-year cap that you can only do it after you have served 5 years or more of your term in prison. So all this is going to come out when we move to the Committee of the Whole House, where we will be making proposals for amendments, and those proposals are a raft. If you have keen interest in this, look at the report by Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, and also attend the third reading of the bill, when actually you now understand what law we shall be putting in place. With those remarks, I beg to reply.
Honourable members, after that, I can reply. I therefore put the question that the Power of Mercy Bill, House Assembly Bill number 56 of 2025, be now read a second time. Will, as many of the opinion say aye, and those of the opinion say nay. Ayes have it. Next order.
A bill for an act of parliament to make further provisions with respect to the power of mercy pursuant to Article 133 of the Constitution to provide for the appointment, tenure, powers, and functions of Power of Mercy Advisory Committee and for connected purposes. Order number 12, motion, consideration of sessional paper number 4 of 2026 on the National Petroleum Policy, resumption of debate.
Member for Nambale, on behalf of the Chairperson, Department Committee on Energy, you're on your feet, I think moving this motion for debate?
Yes, Honorable Speaker.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Honorable. Let me proceed from where we had reached on 19th August, when is 2026. Honorable Speaker, this is the sessional paper number 4 of 2026 on the National Petroleum Policy. And Honorable Speaker, having moved the motion, I had reached to a point where we are pointing out the concerns raised by the committee. Honorable Speaker, the committee supports the policy, but it raised the following serious concerns. Number 1, costs without a financing plan. The policy will cost an estimated Kenya shilling 68.29 billion to implement. However, it carries no finance strategy, no funding commitments, and no way of ranking priorities. The committee recommends a time-bound implementation plan with clear performance indicators and a proper financing and resource mobilization strategy with periodic reporting to Parliament. Honorable Speaker, the second issue is transparency, a framework that this House legislated but which has never been implemented. Section 119 of the Petroleum Act 2019 established a transparency and accountability framework. 6 years later, it has not been operationalized. The policy is also silent on Kenya joining the extractive industries transparency initiative and makes no provision for public disclosure of petroleum contracts, revenues, or beneficial ownership. The committee therefore held that the implementation matrix even treats public participation as optional. The committee recommends that the framework be operationalized and that the cabinet secretary submits a position paper on Kenya's access to the initiative. Number 3, the Petroleum Revenues and Sovereign Wealth Fund. The policy provisions on revenue management are not developed enough to support stabilization of revenues or wealth for the future generation, and they make no reference to the Sovereign Wealth Fund Bill 2026, which was read the first time in this House on 11th March 2026 and is now an act of parliament. That act proposes a fund with stabilization component, an infrastructure and development component, and a future generation component. The committee recommends that the policy be aligned with the bill once enacted, and this is important. Mr. Speaker, that petroleum revenue going into the fund be first paid into consolidated fund and appropriated by this House in accordance with the Article 206 of the Constitution. Number 4, provision of the policy that is contrary to the law. The committee found that the policy places custody of upstream petroleum data with the ministry. Section 10D of the Energy Act 2019 expressly assigns that function to the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority. The policy is therefore inconsistent with the statute. The committee recommends that the policy be revised within 6 months to vest petroleum data custody and oversight in the authority and confirm the separation of policy, regulatory and commercial function between the ministry and the authority and the National Oil Corporation. Number 5, local content and lessons from the Turkana. The local content provisions are broad with no measurable targets, no timelines, and no enforcement. The committee was reminded of the early oil pilot scheme in Turkana, where local employment was limited, capacity building was lacking, and local business barely featured in the supply chain. Without firm local content rules, this sector risks becoming an enclave industry. The committee recommends a robust local content framework with clear targets, monitoring, and capacity building. Number 6, community land consent. Where community land has been registered under the Community Land Act 2016, communities now hold legal authority over that land. The committee recommends stronger provisions on host community engagement and protection of the community rights throughout the life of the petroleum project. Number 7, environmental safeguards. The committee heard of the communities in Turkana exposed to contaminated hazardous waste liners and of poor disposal and decommissioning in Lamu. The National Oil Spill Contingency Plan remains largely unimplemented. The policy also omits environmental deposit bonds, even though regulations for them already exist under the EMA and EMA. NEMA is missing from the decommissioning process in the implementation matrix. The committee recommends binding safeguards on hazardous waste, oil spills, preparedness, decommissioning, and restoration, and that NEMA be expressly designated the principal environmental regulator at every stage of the petroleum operation. Number 8, consumer and security of supply. Honorable Speaker, because we import almost all our fuel, global price shocks are felt directly by the mwananchi. The policy does not provide for transparent pricing, consumer presentation in tariff reviews, or protection against market manipulation. The committee recommends stronger energy security measures, including strategic petroleum reserves and the diversified supply, stronger consumer protection and oversight of petroleum pricing. Lastly, inclusion and data and standards. The policy has no express provision on gender equality, disability, and social inclusion. It also lacks a petroleum data governance framework, cybersecurity standards, and adequate emphasis on engineering standards and professional certification. The committee recommends that this be mainstreamed and that a national petroleum data repository with data over sovereignty protections be developed. Honorable Speaker, having considered all the submissions and observations, the committee recommends as follows. Number one, the House adopt this report on sessional paper number 4 of 2026 on the National Petroleum Policy. Number two, that following the adoption of the policy, all proposed legislation on oil and gas matters be guided by the policy. And lastly, that the Cabinet Secretary for Energy and Petroleum, the Energy Petroleum Regulatory Authority, the National Environmental Management Authority, and other relevant state agencies implement the directives set out in the report, and that the Cabinet Secretary reports to the committee on the progress made within 12 months of the adoption of this report. Honorable Speaker, having moved the report, I beg, having laid the report, I beg to move and request the House to adopt the report. I now also invite the Honorable Member Victor Koech, the Honorable Member for Chepalungu, to second.
The member for Chepalungu, the Honorable Victor Koech.
Yeah, thank you so much, Honorable Speaker. As I rise, I would like to proceed to second, and as I do so, Honorable Speaker, allow me then to make a few observations that have been left out by the mover of the motion. Chair, with any other sessional papers that this House considers, the Speaker of this House then had put to the committee, and we did a proper public participation that was both quantitative and qualitative. And having analyzed all the observation and all the submissions that were made by the witnesses that appeared before us, we made clear observations and the recommendation as has been read out and has been laid out by the mover of this particular motion. And in particular, Honorable Speaker, without repeating myself, I would like to put to this House, and as I associate myself fully with what has been said, without necessarily repeating myself, allow me, the Honorable Speaker, instead to draw the attention of the House to a further matter that the committee considered. This, Honorable Speaker, it cuts across.
Order. The Honorable mover of this bill and the member on his feet now. I will allow you to do what you're doing now, but next time I won't allow you to read your submissions word for word. You will proceed that way today, but in future don't do that. Proceed.
Thank you. Well guided, Honorable Speaker. Like I was saying, without repeating myself, I would like to put across to the floor of the House on the observation that we made, and anything else that have been said out by the mover of the motion, and that's cut across everything else, that includes the completeness of the institution charged with the implementation of this policy. Honorable Speaker, it is a awakening call to this particular House that recently this House passed an FDP, that is the Field Development Plan. And equally, Honorable Speaker, it touched on the production sharing contracts for Block 6 and Block 7, that is T6 and T7 in Lokichar, Honorable Speaker. This is an undertaking that the committee also went through all the considerations, and in eventuality, Honorable Speaker, we will have the first tanker moving the production of oil from Lokichar all the way to the coastal region, Honorable Speaker. And some of the observations that we've made, some of the recommendations that we made into the policy, Honorable Speaker, are going to address the gaps that were there through the legislation. That is why the committee has made recommendations that the minister then, the cabinet minister for energy, together with all other regulatory authorities, then moves in with speed, and within 6 months, Honorable Speaker, proposes a new policy then that integrates everything else that have been left out. With those very few remarks, without repeating myself, Honorable Speaker, allow me then to second. I beg to second. Thank you.
Done and well said. Oh, members, the motion having been moved ably and seconded ably, I now propose the motion that this House adopts the report of the Departmental Committee on Energy on its consideration of the National Paper number 4 of 2026 on the National Petroleum Policy, laid on the table of the House on Thursday, the 2nd of July 2026, and approves the National Paper number 4 2026 on the National Petroleum Policy. Honorable Mawadi, you want to contribute to this?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this motion and make a few comments. There is need for us to really consider the local content of any of the oil that is produced here in Kenya. There is a very huge gap because we don't consider the locals, especially the people in Turkana in this one. There is need for the local content in terms of the trucks that are ferrying this to also to be locally sourced and the contractors be local Kenyan. Also, they need to strengthen a NOC. Most countries have national oil companies that normally are the ones that have given the responsibility of looking to the reserves of any oil or petrol when we have shortages or incidents like the current one that we are going through. So they need really to strengthen NOC. The other thing that we abandoned that we should go back and ensure that we do is complete the LAPSET and the LAPSET pipeline all the way to Lokicha and Ethiopia and Southern Sudan. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Mutunga, you want to contribute to this? Would I therefore then call the mover to reply?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I wish to thank the Honorable Member for Embakasi South and also a member of the Energy Committee to have made a contribution on this bill. Honorable Member, the House will note that this is the first standalone policy on petroleum this country has ever had since the year 2004, and I therefore urge the members to consider the key concern, the 9 key concerns that the committee raised while preparing for this particular policy, so that members can look at it further as we send it to the Cabinet Secretary to prepare and forward it back to the House. And I therefore wish to reply.
Members, with that, I therefore now put the question that this House adopts the report of the Departmental Committee on Energy on its consideration of the National Paper number 4 of 2026 on the National Petroleum Policy, laid on the table of the House on Thursday, 2nd of July 2026, and approves the National Paper number 4 of 2026 on the National Petroleum Policy. Will as per other opinion say aye? Those of the opinion say nay. Ayes have it.
Order number 13, motion, appointment of an external auditor to audit the accounts of the Office of the Auditor General.
The Honorable Chairperson of the Public Accounts Committee, the Honorable Tindi Mwale.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to move the motion that the House approves the appointment of MSMGI Alekim LLP to conduct an audit of the Office of the Auditor General with respect to accounts and financial statements, staff car and mortgage schemes for the financial years 2025-2026,